poverty and address other transnational challenges facing many countries of the Global South. In addition to this accomplishment, I must say, equally important to all of us is that through this initiative, we have built an intellectual community with friendship and solidarity. That has made my job today as a moderator really easy, because I feel almost unnecessary to introduce everyone. We know each other so well. We discussed, we jointly worked, and we debated. So, however, today, since we have an expanded community with new strategic partners, let me still take the time, have the honor again, to introduce first our representatives of the networks of the Global Thinkers Initiative. We have from the Global Research Consortium on Economic Structural Transformation, GRECEST, represented by Professor Justin Lin. Professor Lin, everybody are familiar with him, is the professor and Honorable Dean of National School of Development of Peking University, Dean of Institute of South-South Cooperation and Development in China. And also joined from this network is Professor Xu Jiajun, Executive Deputy Dean of Institute of New Structural Economics, Peking University, China. Now, we also have from Latin America Initiative for Public Policy Research, ELAP, represented by Ms. Ana Patricia Munoz, Executive Director, Grupo Faro from Ecuador, joined by her colleague, Maria Caridad Ortiz, as well as Margarita Benecki from Fusadez, El Salvador. Welcome. We have from Southern Voice, we have our old friend, Dr. Deb Bhattacharya, Distinguished Fellow from the Center of Policy Dialogue and Center of Global Development, Bangladesh. We also have Andrea Aldernis, Director, Southern Voice. I know Southern Voice has selected a new chair, and we will introduce her very soon in our journey forward. We also have from the network of Southern think tanks, NEST, represented by colleagues from all different chapters. From Africa chapter, we have Ms. Elizabeth Sidiropoulos, Chief Executive of the South African Institute of International Affairs, SAIA, from South Africa. And also her colleague, Ms. Luanda Mupongos, Outreach and Partnership Manager. We also have NEST Asia, represented by Professor Xu Li from the College of International Development and Global Agriculture, Sitka China Institute of South-South Cooperation in Agriculture, China Agricultural University, Dean and Professor. We have from NEST Latin America chapter, Dr. Angie Suiza, a fellow from the Institute for Applied Economic Research, Brazil. We also have from this Latin America chapter, Ms. Laura Anticulacioso, Brazil. We have from, two from this Latin America chapter. And we have from Middle East and North Africa for Public Administration Research Network, MENAPAR, represented by both Dr. Ben Shams, Director General and President of MENAPAR, and Dr. Sofine, Director General, the International Institute of Administrative Sciences. I hope I didn't miss anybody. I know all the 5 networks I have introduced have been actively engaging throughout the initiative, and I hope you will stay engaged moving forward. I see the screen sharing of somebody's screen. Now we know all the apps you use. Maybe you can stop sharing screen. Thank you very much. So all these 5 networks have been very actively engaging and contributing throughout the journey, and I hope you will stay engaged moving forward. Now, on behalf of all the networks, let me express our special thanks to our founding partner, Yingke Law Firm, represented by Ms. Linda Yang, Executive Chairwoman and Global President of Yingke Law Firm China, joined by her colleague, Gao Pingjia. Yingke has been a financial contributor and a knowledge partner for this initiative. We cannot accomplish so much without their generous contribution all these years. And started in 2017, the year 2020 marks the 5th and last year of the implementation of the first phase of this important initiative. So today, as we move forward, we're also very pleased to welcome our new partners, new members of the Global Thinkers community. First, I would like to welcome Chinese Academy of Social Science, CAS, which is co-chairing the network of think tanks on poverty eradication for sustainable development. This was launched last year on International Poverty Day, together with our office. And we have the honor to welcome the representative of this network from CAS by Dr. Wang Lei, Director General of the Bureau of International Cooperation from CAS, and Mr. Cui Jianming, Director General of the Bureau of Scientific Research Management of CAS. Welcome. Now I would also like to welcome the South Center, which undertakes research and analysis oriented on various international policy areas and with a strong focus on South-South cooperation. It responds to the request for policy advice, technical support from collective entities of the Global South, such as G77 and China. South Center is a strategic partner for the Global Thinkers Initiative, and it is represented by Dr. Li Yuefen, Senior Advisor on South-South Cooperation and Development Finance, together with her colleague, Daniel Uribe. Welcome. Yeah, very importantly, I would like to welcome Central Asia Regional Economic Cooperation, CAREC, think tank network, which hosts leading think tanks from the CAREC member states. Its work is dedicated on promoting the economic cooperation in Central Asia and allowing the Silk Road through knowledge generation and sharing. This really helps the whole network to have another regional focus, so that brings the whole global concept to complete. Now we have a representative from CAREC by Mr. Khalid Uma, a Chief of Strategy and Planning from CAREC Institute, and Namina Gasimova, Grants and Program Director from Center for Economic and Social Development from Azerbaijan. Also joining us today are our special partners, strategic partners, including CESRIC. Some of you have met from the last meeting, Ms. Tazin Qureshi, researcher from Social Research and Training Center for Islamic Countries, CESRIC, Turkey, based in Turkey, joined by her colleague, Dr. Sam Tintin. And very importantly, let me introduce to you our dear friends, longtime colleague and mentor and supporter, now strategic partner for the Global Thinkers, Mr. Hege Espe, Senior Advisor from Norwegian Agency for Exchange Cooperation, NOREC. Hege, it's your first time joining the steering committee. Welcome. Those new partners, I'm sure, I'm very confident, will further strengthen and enhance knowledge and research contributions of the global coalition to include expertise on, different thematic focus like poverty eradication, regional integration, and trade, to strengthen the overall community's intellectual power. So, dear colleagues, now this is a long introduction. I think it's not fair for the Secretariat to give me only 5 minutes to introduce everyone, but I hope I have done a good job doing that. The past 5 years we have worked together has been an important time for South-South and Triangular Cooperation. The second high-level conference on South-South cooperation has delivered the BAPA Plus 40 outcome document with enhanced commitment of UN member states to South-South and Triangular Cooperation. We have also experienced a strong momentum of South-South cooperation and an increased recognition of its contribution to the SDGs. The 20th General Assembly High-Level Committee on South-South Cooperation have reconfirmed that South-South cooperation has proven to be valuable now more than ever as developing countries support each other to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. We all live in a world today facing many challenges to the concept of solidarity. We need more than ever before cooperation and mutual support for a shared future. But better cooperation requires better policy, which in turn must be evidence-based. That is why UNOSSC for South-South cooperation has placed knowledge and research as a central pillar of our work. We have a new strategic framework for next 4 years. Many of you have contributed insights and suggestions. And in that framework, in the coming 4 years, we will continue to strengthen the network and partnership with Southern think tanks, centers of excellence, for research, for advancing thought leadership, for deepening the sharing of perspectives from the Global South. I'm also very happy to report to the steering committee that the UN system has launched its system-wide strategy on South-South cooperation. And last year, we have developed an action plan. It means the whole UN system will coherently support South-South cooperation. And that has recognized in that strategy the work of South-South global thinkers and embedded it as an important research initiative for the entire UN system to utilize and build on. UNOSSC for South-South cooperation in collaboration with UNDP is committed to continuing to strengthen the sharing of knowledge and research in partnership with you. So in the coming months, we're going to conceptualize the future of this initiative. Today, we really hope to hear from you, your advice and insights, and so that we can benefit from this community to move forward in a more impactful way. Today is a pity that my director AI cannot join us today, but before we listen to your deliberation and advice, let me save my opening remarks. And this is, the overall introduction and opening. Let me give the floor to my colleague, Ms. Faiza Enfedi, Director of Effectiveness Group, UNDP, to deliver opening remarks. Faiza, very pleased to have you. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Grace, and welcome everyone. Good afternoon, good evening for all of those who are operating in different time zones. Grace has given a very comprehensive opening. There is not much left actually for UNDP to add, but I think what all I will say is that UNDP is privileged to co-host the Joint Secretariat of the South-South Global Thinkers Network, together with our UN Office of South-South Cooperation. And hearing, what Grace was saying, and I have, it's been 6 months for me on my current assignment. I was earlier in operating and working in a country office. I hear that this particular Thinkers Network, it's a fairly unique initiative because it's almost like a network of networks, and perhaps one of its kind, which is pulling together new and emerging thoughts and evidence-based research from a Southern perspective to inform policy and accelerate progress towards the SDGs. And obviously, it's very closely aligned to some of our high-level commitments that have been made, be it in the second high-level conference in 2019, BABA plus 40, as well as at the 20th session of the High-Level Committee on South-South Cooperation, which was held last year. Colleagues, I would like to mention that UNDP's new strategic plan, 2022 to 2025, places importance and priority to South-South and triangular cooperation. And it considered this as a critical approach about how we think about the future of development. And therefore, in line with that thinking, UNDP is currently also developing a new body of work support in the area of South-South and triangular cooperation as we speak. And we are also seeing how we can be much more effective in terms of, pulling together communities of practice that can scour information from across the organization, which means also in our field and at the regional level, to figure and to source and to suss out some of our approaches that work and that maximize the knowledge that is comes from the South to the benefit of the South. I just would really also take this opportunity to congratulate this initiative for another successful year, despite the challenges which were posed by the pandemic. And also, the solid research papers, I believe 9 that have been published and disseminated through this initiative. And I think my final I think remarks would be that as we use this opportunity today to reflect on sort of our lessons and our achievements, we will also sort of see how we can prioritize some of our critical interventions for 2021, so that we see how this particular effort can be further strengthened. And we see how the work of the South-South Global Thinkers initiative can be embedded in the agenda that is set at the global level. So I wish you a very successful event. Thank you very much. And Grace, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Faiza, for the opening remarks. And now we would like to have a presentation from the Joint Secretariat of this initiative. Let us first review and take stock of South-South Global Thinkers' progress during the past 5 years, during the first phase, reflecting on lessons learned and also brainstorming on the initiative's future. So it will be a brief presentation followed by an open floor discussion. So now I would like to welcome Ms. Yuko Suzuki, Global Policy Advisor on Effective Development Cooperation from UNDP, to do the presentation on behalf of the Secretariat.
Thank you very much, Grace, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. I think I will actually be highlighting around the key headline recommendation that has come out from the independent strategic project review. And then I believe that you, Grace, or Sham will do sort of looking through some of the key sort of emerging trend with a view to really set the scene and the context for our discussion, brainstorming ideas about the second phase and what are the ways of working. So in terms of the independent strategic project review, this was undertaken last year. And then, by the way, thank you very much for many of you who took the time to be interviewed by the consultant late last year. And then the review report itself was also shared as a background document for this meeting. So I will just highlight just a very few headlines, recommendation from the review. In terms of the impact and substantive focus, the review found that the creation of the coalition has contributed to establishing a common understanding on South-South cooperations and promoting relevant conversations in various global fora. I think, Grace also highlighted some of the quite a strong achievements and the results that we have seen, and then I hope that you have also seen in your engagement in these initiatives. The review also found that it contributes to the generations and and dissemination of narrative on South-South cooperation, and then therefore recommended for the South-South global thinkers to continue advancing the network's leadership in producing evidence-based research. Now, the scope of the first phase of the project did not necessarily aim to generate knowledge and policy linkages, but the review actually found that there were some useful and very interesting examples of the members of the think tank that have engaged with the government in the policy dialogue at the country level, and that there might be a scope to explore how these linkages can be scaled up. Again, the UN system-wide strategy on South-South and Triangle cooperation, as Grace highlighted, also sort of draw the importance of enhancing the integration of perspectives and the needs of the Global South into regional and global policy dialogues. So the review to that end noted that for this to happen, the good practice of national linkages between think tanks and the government and the Global South could be analyzed, understood, and disseminated through the Global Thinkers platform. In terms of the objectives of the initiatives in the project, just to recall, the project had three main objectives. One is to build partnerships with major think tank networks to deepen the understanding of the South-South cooperations and triangle cooperation. The second one is to establish a global online platform that connects think tank networks and centers of excellence. And then the third one, to support capacity development of think tank networks to provide evidence-based analysis, advisory services to inform policy making and the practice on South-South and triangle cooperation. Now, for these objectives, the review found that all three objectives were achieved. And to further strengthen the impact of the initiative, the review recommended to maintain, expand, and enhance the South-South Global Thinkers Network by including building the new partnerships, inviting new strategic think tank networks to join based on their expertise and added value, and to also invite additional partners to invest, support, and be part of this major collective effort in the generation of knowledge and policy relevant research. And then in addition to that, the review also recommended to explore ways in which to support the institutional capabilities of the Global Thinkers Coalition and the networks themselves. Now, on the policy research area, the first phase of the project had 10 priority research areas, and then the review in the report provided some thematic area as food for thoughts, but also recommended that it is still of great relevance to include research area around South-South and triangle cooperation issue as a modality. And I think in the later on in this presentation, that the colleagues will cover some of the suggested areas of priority, based on the reflections of the emerging trend in the South-South and triangle cooperation over the last 5 years. Quickly on the operational matters, more around the advocacies and communications, the review recommended to strengthen the visibility and awareness about the project, the research, and also the think tank network itself within the UN, but also among partners to really expand the broader knowledge community working on South-South and triangle cooperation, and to really further open the opportunities for the think tanks to engage in global regional policy dialogue, including through robust communication strategies and actions. With regard to the steering committees and executive secretariat roles and functions, the review found that perhaps it's not a drastic changes that are needed in the steering committee composition, but it would be useful to explore possible observatory status of the UN agencies, partners, or field offices as needed. And I also noted the usefulness of continuous support from the UN Office of South-South Cooperation and UNDP as the Joint Executive Secretariat. And then also to that end, continue in building the successful partnership with the Human Development Report Office was noted one of the things that will be quite useful to explore in the operational matters around what the Executive Secretary will do, and then the ways in which the steering committee might engage. Lastly, on that sort of operational matters, the review also noted that financial support in the current context affected severely by the COVID-19 may actually confront the South-Southern Triangle Cooperation as well as these initiatives with the funding challenges. And therefore, it will need to explore ways in which the resource mobilization efforts can also be owned and spearheaded by the members of the think tank networks and the initiative itself. Next one, just to kind of very headline level of a few recommendations from the Executive Secretariat based on the reflections of the review. If you can go to the next slide, that would be great. The review sort of talked about the importance of the visibilities and disseminations and communication around the evidence and research that are generated from this thinkers network initiatives, and then to also facilitate the policy research nexus. For that, the Executive Secretariat feels that it is also very important to include other UN official languages and translate research papers into local languages. So that's something that we think it might be of an interest to explore in the second phase. Noted on the importance of the communications and the advocacy, while of course the Executive Secretariat will continue supporting these areas, it will also be equally important to explore the network member-driven efforts for sort of sparking the communications and also a visibility around the work of the initiatives and the work of the research generated from this network. If the second phase to somehow explore ways in which to strengthen the policy and research nexus, it may also be good to kind of consider how we might assess the policy impact of the research and the work that are generated from this thinkers network. And then we might also explore a structured way in which to strengthen the engagement with the UN agencies, given that this initiative is very much sort of recognized and anchored in the UN system-wide strategy on the South-Southern Triangle Cooperation. So I will leave it at that and give floor to the UN Office of South-South Cooperation colleagues to go over the next few slides with regard to the emerging priorities and some of the reflections on trends.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Yuko, for your introduction of the strategic review. Let me now move forward on what we think could be forward-looking priorities, also informed by the strategic review, as well as, we have also commissioned researchers to put forward some advice based on the past 5 years research and policy work. As Yuko has summarized very well, that the South-South Global Thinkers has managed to achieve a lot. And this slide is just showing out achievement in different categories, including our online community, very active e-discussions on various subjects, and the joint research commissioned. And also, one thing I would like to emphasize is that we have advanced on the business model, not only relying on directly commissioned research, but also leveraging knowledge produced by the community and help to advocate it, either through branding it as South-South Idea Paper or through our online social media channels and all advocacy and community to share, to the globally for more readership and more feedback. So I would not focus on the achievement, which has already been introduced by Yuko. Let's move on to the next slide. Based on the strategic review and researchers' advice, building on the past work, we have identified several areas that are critical for advancing evidence-based analysis to inform policy. And these are some thematic areas, including on thematic SDG issues, for example, poverty eradication, SDG 1. This is an overarching goal of sustainable development, and South-South cooperation has proven to be very relevant to advance a future of no poverty for all. And we have also included a new partnership, a new network focusing on poverty and sustainable development. Before I move on, one thing to ask Tina to, if you can make sure that our new partner CAS, the two representatives also have video camera accessibility. Yeah, I received a message reminding on that. So first thematic issue I would like to highlight here is about poverty. We see abundant evidences from the Global South to address this issue, and we think there are more space for us to focus investment on this. Climate change has been identified as the biggest challenge for achieving sustainable development. The preservation of the environment is a priority for the Global South, and the recent Glasgow COP has also told us the importance of developing countries coming together to be more coordinated about the positioning and informed by evidence and data to come forward collectively with more ambition and more action addressing climate change, especially in the adaptation. So climate change and disaster risk reduction is another area that has been highlighted for the future research to consider. There is a significant research already on the ability of South-South mechanisms to facilitate access and transfer of technologies, especially regarding access to finance. However, there's a need to further leverage financial resources mobilization and investment aligned with SDGs. The engagement with Southern-led multilateral, regional, and bilateral financial and development finance institutions, very important. And this area is also received a lot of attention from the research community. And the UN system is also calling for more mobilization, more research, and more actions in advancing financing for development. COVID-19, of course. Actually, during COVID-19 responses, we have really seen South-South cooperation in action in terms of the early responses, and also very importantly, in terms of cooperation on production, development and co-production of vaccines, that to enhance the productive capacity and self-reliance of developing countries is critical. So one area to consider, as a priority, and we are called on to strengthen support in this area, is on South-South and triangular cooperation in vaccine development, production, access, and distribution. Also in the General Assembly High-Level Committee resolution last year, it brought to the attention South-South cooperation in the overall supporting for building resilient health systems. South-South cooperation has produced significant results and been recognized as important. This needs to be explored in the context of post-COVID as well. In the context of post-pandemic era, how do we leverage South-South cooperation better to advance poverty reduction, reducing inequalities, technological development, innovation, financing to support the overall recovery of the global economy and social development post-pandemic era. Next slide. I have just gave 5 examples of how Next slide, please. I have just gave example of how the thematic issues of South-South cooperation could be advanced further through this initiative. Now let's move on to the next slide about South-South cooperation as a modality. I think we are missing that slide. Who's sharing the screen? Jiajun? Okay, it's all right. So let me just talk about it. If you don't have that slide, Jiajun, maybe you can just stop sharing. Okay, I remember the other issues that was considered as priority. First of all, in order to have better South-South cooperation, you need institutions. So there is a consensus that national capacity for advanced planning, managing, implementing South-South cooperation is very important. And evidence has proven that where there are set up mechanisms and institutions, there are more systematic approach and more scale and more impact of South-South cooperation. This applies both at national level, sub-regional level, and regional level, and global level. So this is an area that we hope we can find more research and advice and evidence and data to support countries to better develop capacity. Again, how to monitor and the impact, monitor and assess the impact of South-South cooperation is another area that continued to be important. There, it comes back to 5 years ago when we designed this program. We talked about data, how to have data available to support the assessment of impact. I think 5 years ago, the situation was different. At that time, we really realized that there's such a strong the strong belief that there is this OECD framework for ODA. So data are collected in a standardized manner many years already. So you have mature database to support that. While South-South cooperation has its own features, principles, way of working, it hasn't a one established framework. Right? But now, 5 years passed, we see an approach generating multiple frameworks from the real practice, from different countries, different regions, and many have attempted to integrate South-South principles and special features into the way data was collected and projects were assessed. Now, we are at a stage also through the past years, this community has contributed so much data. We have this South-South Globe Galaxy platform collecting over 800 curated, documented good practices and much more submissions from the 416, now 480 institutions registered on South-South Galaxy. So we have really a sea of data, but how to organize those data to be able to inform our research better, to inform the trend of South-South cooperation, and to inform policy making in the future. That is a question that we have to think as a community. The next aspect is triangular cooperation. That we see with South-South cooperation strong momentum, and many OECD countries and the Global South is supporting in their way as a partner in this collaboration as triangular cooperation partner. And this is an important modality to deliver sustainable development goals together, leveraging comparative advantage in expertise and resources. Oh, yes, here it is. Thank you very much. So, but there's a lack of research on actual practice of triangular cooperation. There is a concept defining it, but there is, I think, far less data to support how that concept is actually practiced in reality. How can we best leverage triangular partners to really form horizontal relationship, demand-driven, with all the respectful principles to advance sustainable development together. And this is also that we have a new partner joining us for this future of the initiative from NOREC. And also OECD is also very interested, and many countries are interested to support that as well. So it is an area that we could pay attention and give more support. Lastly, there's an urge by member states to call on strengthened UN system-wide support to South-South cooperation. And that's why we developed, together with our UN entities in the interagency task force on South-South cooperation, the UN system-wide strategy. So we welcome research community to look at UN support and to give advice on how to best mobilize and all UN agencies' different capacities to support South-South cooperation. These are just examples. It's not exclusive. I would like to actually open the floor now. If we can stop sharing the screen, thank you. We can open the floor now to listen to your advice. Maybe the first round, I would like to invite anyone from the steering committee to, if you have any immediate advice and suggestion. Yeah, and then you can raise your hand. You can use the raise hand function to give us some overall comments on this initiative the past 5 years, especially moving forward. And then we will do a round of presentation by the networks and the new partners. Each one we would like to invite one speaker to give us 2 priority areas that you think we would like to focus on. Yeah, but if I already see Dr. Deb and Professor Justin Lin raised hand, so let me invite these 2 speakers first. But feel free, if you feel that you already would like to introduce priority areas, and we will have 3 to 5 minutes for each of you. So Dr. Deb, you first, the floor is yours, and then Professor Justin Lee. Thank you.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever is appropriate. I'm speaking from Dhaka, Bangladesh. It's almost 7 in the evening here. First of all, let me start by complimenting our Secretariat for a fantastic job over these last years and having 3 successful rounds of research and much more events, including BAPA 40 and many other things. I don't need to repeat them all. So I think I will be resonating the general views of our participants, the steering committee members who have been involved in this process quite closely and have participated in it, to express our appreciation to the Joint Secretariat. I would also like to specifically thank Grace and Yoko for their presentations and giving us some, not only a retrospect, but also some prospect as well, how to move forward on that. Given that so many good colleagues are all around, and I would also like to take this advantage to welcome the new members who are coming on board and say that it will be a fantastic journey together in the future as we move on that. And so my one point to both to Grace and to Yoko, to help me understand. You see, if you look at the first slide which Yoko put together on the review and the recommendations, there are 2 focuses. Fundamental. One focus is about creating evidence-based policies and research. So that is one. But if you look at the second focus, which is about the strengthening the relationship or the cooperation with the governments, and also the implementation of the policy recommendations which is coming on board. So my concern is to what extent we have addressed that second part, because that part it does not always get reflected on in the reporting, because it's more on the first part. We do get into joint dialogues and other conferences, but regarding policy uptake, we really do not have as such. And if you look at the recommendation slide, in fact, there is nothing on that, how to really strengthen our relationship with the southern governments, for that matter, in how they are using all these policy recommendations or researches, which evidence which have been done. So my basic point to all of you is that, to the Secretary and to the colleagues, just to think through and to bring that part, the second focus, a bit more prominently out, and also reflect that operationally in the coming years. Thank you very much for recognizing me first. Good luck to everybody.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Deb. Very important point. I will give a brief feedback after we hear from Professor Lin, and then I also see Director General Mr. Wang Lei raised hand. So after Professor Lin, we will have Mr. Wang Lei. So Professor Lin, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. First, I'd like to congratulate the Secretariat for a very good presentation, and certainly also for this think tank network, the achievement in the past 5 years, and I was delighted to have this honor of being part of this network from the very beginning, and to work together and to see the achievement. And overall, I support all your recommendations about what we should do in the future. But there's one area I'd like to highlight. Compared to 5 years ago, there are so many new challenges, because at the time we did not anticipate the COVID-19 pandemic, and we did not anticipate this geopolitical risk that emerging in the world. And so looking forward, I think we are going to have a lot of new challenges, new uncertainties, and especially that will make our goal to achieve SDG become increasingly challenging. And under this kind of situation, what can we do? I think we need to be more innovative in a way, because the resources may be reduced, but the goal that we want to achieve still be there. So under the kind of situation, I think we should encourage some kind of more innovative thinking. For example, policy recommendation, often we say evidence-based. But evidence-based, certainly that's very good, especially myself as academic people. We want to publish article papers, we need to have evidence for that. But our challenges in the future, and especially we need to be innovative. But innovative means things new, right? And under kind of situation, we may not have the evidence to support that. But we need to address the issue with new ways. So in that way, I would say that in our network from the South, also need to give some space for some innovative ideas, innovative thinking, innovative way to deal with the situation in their country, in their localities. Because especially if you look into the recommendation from the major development institutions, very often they base ideas from the North. And I try to recommend those kind of ideas to the South. Well, they have good intention, but very often that may not work because the condition in the southern country are different. So I think that this network has a very special mission. We should encourage innovative thinking, innovative ideas based on the reality in the South, and especially under this kind of challenging environment. And our network should be a platform to cultivate, to encourage this kind of innovative ideas. Certainly, innovative ideas may not work, but we know if the idea is not innovative, it will not work in most cases either. So I hope this network will become a platform for innovative idea, innovative thinking from the South. So that's my recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Lin. You inspired something that I would like to say in the feedback time. Thank you very much. And now let's hear from Mr. Wang Lei. The floor is yours, Mr. Wang. I think you're muted.
Yes. Okay, it's fine now. Yeah. Thank you, Grace. Thank you very much. It's really a great pleasure for us to attend this meeting. Me and Professor Cui Jianming, we both from the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences. From last October, we started this global network of think tanks on poverty eradication and sustainable development. We are a newcomer. We expected in the future we could have very fruitful cooperation with this global coalition of think tanks. I also would like to congratulate the great achievements by the program and also by the Secretariat. About the suggestions, I think a very key issue we should keep in mind is as a think tank platform, I think we should pay high attention on the special advantage of think tank. We talk about how to inform policy. I think it's not only about to inform policy, but also to inform at the social level. So I think think tank, the special feature of think tank is that we have the linkage on the one hand with the government at the national level and also at the regional level, local level. And on the other hand, we have very close connection with the society. I mean the social organizations, the community level, companies, enterprises. So really think tanks, we can function as a bridge to convene the discussions on the most key issues concerning social and economic development to include not only representatives from the government, but also from the society. And another very important key point is that the think tank, our strong advantage is that we have the very rich resources of knowledge and research. So I think we should have our projects and programs focusing on research based on the social practices and also on the performance of policy applications. So I mean, for the next phase of this program, I would like to suggest we should give more highlight of the special attributes of think tanks and try to better play a role to facilitate the communications between governments and the society and take advantage of our knowledge and expertise to provide more high quality policy advisements, advice to the government, and also to facilitate the dissemination of best practice and knowledge to the society. So that's my suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Wang Lei. And for the first round of open discussion, I see one hand on the screen. So I would like to call Dr. Andre for the last comment on the opening round. And I will give a quick feedback. And I also invite anybody to from the Secretariat, from UNDP, UNOSSC, any feedback, we can conclude the first opening round of discussion, and then we move on to network by network suggestions on priority areas. So Andre, the floor is yours, please.
Many thanks, Grace. And let me also commend the Global Thinkers Initiative for all its achievements, and in particular the UN Office for South-South Cooperation for leading this initiative. And thank you also for the presentation. I also agree wholeheartedly with all that was presented and all the recommendations, as was already put by Mr. Wangley. I see the initiative as operating the interface between evidence-based research, which is an activity that's carried out essentially by academia, and public policy, which is one that's carried out essentially by governments. And this is always a challenge because these two worlds, they have different languages, different views, and they don't always interact with each other in very effective ways. So I see this as a very valuable platform for that purpose. And in addition to that, it is also, as was already put, a network of networks, which is also a challenge in and of itself, because we all come from different institutions, but not only that, different countries and different regions of the world. And so this is, I see it as essential to have this sharing of views and different approaches to development at large and to South-South cooperation in particular. As far as the substantive areas go, I also agree, very much agree with the emphasis on triangular cooperation. I agree that we don't have data on that. We don't have much research on that either. We talk a lot about it, but we know very little about it. And it has been emphasized in most notably in the BAPA Plus 40 meeting in 2019. And it is also a way for the North and South to interact, particularly given that global governance on development cooperation is at the moment so weak and so fragmented. I would also like to suggest exploring more the role of the private sector, which is seen as increasingly important in achieving the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. And it plays a key role, arguably not just in the North, but also in the South. And we need to know more about how the private sector can contribute to our goals, in particular the SDGs, and the challenges and dangers that lie in involving the private sector, particularly in developing countries where institutional settings are often weak or non-existent. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Angie. So thank you for these very important suggestions. And, you know, it seems sometimes I really feel by coming together, we already mutually responding to some shared questions and inspired the thinking together. For example, when Deb, you were talking about, yes, evidence-based for policy making, but how about the use of this research to inform not only policy making, the implementation and the relationship building. So there, I think both Andrew and Mr. Wang has already shared some thoughts, and I have an example of we are also thinking about changing the way we work. One thing we would like to strengthen in the future is to leverage the unique positioning of our office at the UN to start from the resolution end. The governments come together to negotiate resolutions and to launch policies at the UN forum. So we start from that end to identify what are the areas that countries and governments are negotiating and that are relevant to South-South cooperation. And from there, we would identify areas that we invest in collecting existing research, generating new research, and communicating research outcomes to the policymakers and negotiators at the table of UN, so that the South-South evidence and triangular cooperation evidence can feed directly to their question mark in their mind. It's not to, you know, influence or whatever, but it's informing them with those evidence and analysis. So that approach, we tried in the first phase, but not systematically. So moving forward, we would like to take that approach. That is what I think at the global level, what we can do to strengthen that leadership. We also need to hear from you as think tanks, deeply rooted, well established in your own country and region. What are the channels that you would think most strategic to strengthen that linkage between research and policy making and policy implementation? And how can UN be of support in that sense? UN system reform involves reform at global, regional, country level. So we need to hear from you. If you have suggestions on regional and country level and global level, we could embed that idea into the design of the future work. On the suggestion on innovation, Professor Lin, thank you so much for that. Indeed, we are facing challenges and questions and uncertainties we have not faced before. Maybe we have not had enough evidence. So in our next strategic framework of UN Office for South-South Cooperation, we also build in that element. We are launching a South-South Solution Lab. This lab is trying to look at scalable solutions or experiments. As you said, some may not work, some may work. So it's a lab to bring partners, investors, financiers, implementer, policymaker, thinkers together, co-created, co-design, and test it out with some seed funding. So that is also a way to engage think tanks and researchers in this mix of co-designers to advance innovation. It's only one idea that we are testing for the future years, but on that, really, we would also benefit a lot from this community on ways to advance that. So Mr. Wang Lei, about the linkage of think tank upwards, downwards, connecting the government and the whole society approach. This is so much in line with the momentum of South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation. Thank you very much. In the BAPA Plus 40 outcome document, it is highlighted the multi-stakeholder approach for cooperation, meaning to have better cooperation. The reality has been and not yet fully recognized, and potential not yet fully leveraged, is to engage the whole society approach. And that also has been the success factor enabled poverty eradication in China and many success in the country. So I think that is a very important area. We used to have that area as a priority area for the think tank global initiative. Moving forward, maybe we should strengthen how to really make that work. And that's why in the strategic review, it also emphasized one way to make that work is advocacy and communication, meaning to translate the research outcomes to be readable, understandable, adoptable ideas and actions by the society. So that is a very important area. And thank you very much, Angie, for also emphasizing that. And I hope I have provided some useful feedback to your ideas. So any other feedback from colleagues? Okay, I see Professor Xu and Dr. Elizabeth also raised your hand. So Professor Xu and Dr. Elizabeth, we have, and also Dr. Ben Shans. We can be flexible about our way of arranging this. Let me, yes, please, Professor Xu.
Okay, thank you, Grace, and congratulations for all the work we have done together in the last several years. I have two suggestions for the future. I think the 8 areas for to dealing with the future for our work is very, very significant. But one thing I would like to say that in the next step, for instance, I have read the book about the Dhaka 60 years, the means for North-South cooperation. We have a kind of a very systematic review of the history in the last 6 decades. And for the South-South cooperation, actually also I have many friends and even Dhaka in many areas, they would also like to know what kind of contributions, what vividly story about the South-South cooperation in the last several decades. But when I want to search for the material, I would feel very confused where to, to find a systematic book and to introduce this kind of history, which platform I will look for. And obviously that, our platform would be a very feasible place to telling a good story about the South-South cooperation to globally, regionally, and country at a country level. I mean, we have about 40 years, so we reviewed history, but all the very official or very general story, whether in the next step, should we have some kind of more practical, more vivid, and more voices from the history of South-South cooperation. And the second is about now we have many of knowledge products at the regional level or global level, but it seems that we not yet have a very typical one flagship of knowledge product for our community. Maybe it's the same like the first suggestion, but it seems like World Bank, they will have a World Bank annual report. UNDP, we would have a human development report. For South-South cooperation, whether shall we need to initiate also a kind of an annual flagship knowledge product, to put the agenda, telling the story, to keep everybody focusing on the same area. Now it's very diversified. Maybe it's also advantage, but the disadvantage is very hard to find a common voice. And certainly, I agree with Professor Justin Lin about innovative. For instance, we have built up a lot of data for South-South cooperation, but what's really innovative methods or solution know-how, to provide, particularly in today, to contribute to providing the global public good. I think that's also a very good entry point for the strength of South-South cooperation. So that's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Xu. Yes, I have seen Dr. Elizabeth.
Hi, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, colleagues, and apologies for coming into the meeting late to start with, but I've picked up on some of the points. I wanted to come in on two issues. In response to your point, Grace, and made by the colleagues around what channels can we use to strengthen the linkage between research, policy making, policy implementation, and at various levels. And I wanted to reflect here on a process that has begun here in Africa, which I thought was really innovative. Certainly has the ingredients of being innovative. And I thought Dr. Lin's comment about not everything that is innovative will work, but for it to work, it needs to be innovative, is the AU Development Agency sort of recognized that, on the continent, we needed to do much more to bring the knowledge that is generated by think tanks in Africa into, or create that nexus between academics, between think tankers and the policy community, both at a national level, but also, of course, at an intergovernmental level. And the initiative they sort of put together, and it started to sort of pick up speed over the last year, is what they call the policy bridge tank, where they're positioning themselves as the AU Development Agency which is the old NEPAD, which is probably a more familiar brand name, is to bring together think tanks from across the continent, create a platform for the research that can then, through their good offices, also bring in governments in Africa to engage with the research, to engage with the evidence, and so on and so forth. And this is still quite a nascent initiative. But to my mind, one of the things, perhaps as a network of networks here, we should think about is also how we engage geographically with various governmental, intergovernmental agencies, organizations at the continental level, in terms of getting knowledge to be taken up, to be engaged on. You know, we as networks also have I think a responsibility to about how the vehicles that we use to attract policymakers to the relevance of our research. And I think you've made the point about how you make it readable, adoptable, and so on. And then lastly, just a couple of things that, because we've actually just had a meeting of this policy bridge tank. I sit on the advisory board. And I think to some extent it overlaps with some of the themes that you highlighted, Grace. Food systems, health systems, economic growth and jobs. And the idea really is to think about these things not in narrow sectoral ways, but the way in which they interconnect with different themes. And so you almost have hub and spoke approaches to these topics. They're all critical for our development. They very much speak to the SDGs. They speak to the SDGs at a time when SDGs, I think from a financing perspective, are probably under attack. But it's another way of thinking about how we advance some of these developmental challenges through this hub and spoke approach, which you know, we were discussing last week at the policy bridge tank. I don't know if that might just help in sort of also seeing what in other parts of the world is being explored and experimented with.
Thank you very much, Dr. Elizabeth. I see now colleagues are already into this mode of conversation. So let me, you know, slightly revise the flow. Yes, for the speakers, Dr. Ben Shams, Angie, please also address the issue we asked about the 2 priority areas that you would like to propose for the next, you know, the next phase of this project. And I was planning to do a time zone sequencing of network by network to talk about your priorities, but I also heard already several networks shared your ideas. So now my suggestion is from all the networks and our new partners, including CAREC and CAS, who is chairing the network of think tanks on poverty eradication and sustainable development newly established, and also our new partner NORAC, our funding partner INCA, whoever, you know, has your ideas to present, both on the project itself and on 2 priority areas for your network, please raise hand so that I would follow that approach and we have a conversation style rather than presentation by presentation. Okay, so now I have on the screen first Dr. Ben Shams, and followed by Dr. Andrea, followed by Dr. Khalid Umar. Please, Dr. Ben Shams, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Grace. Thank you, Grace. Yes, congratulations for all of the progress, the development. Really looking forward for the coming developments together. Coming from a region which research is not on the top of the priorities, and nor it is highly recognized, we are trying our best to bring it on board through other mechanisms. And I think what I'm trying to suggest is really stemming from our region much more than anything else, as we have tried this one to work. which is to bring stakeholders. We usually bring them through a form of a roundtable discussion, bringing policy research on the table with thought leadership to hammer down the issues together, rather than reading it through the documents and discussing it from an academic point of view. It is mostly will be practitioners, but also other stakeholders from the private sector, NGOs, and international organizations to be on the table together to discuss certain things. And I think we have succeeded through BIPA and through the conferences that we have to bring such type of issues, and we're successful. And we'd hopefully be able to be supported through that, such type of initiatives. When it comes to the priorities, I would put the floor, if you don't mind, to Dr. Sufyan, as he has more details to share regarding the priorities in the MENA region. Thank you.
Should I come in now, Grace, or do you want me to wait for my turn? No, you're muted.
Yeah, Safin, can I enlist you after the
Sure, no problem. Yeah.
Hand? Okay, yeah. Thank you very much, and that should be followed by, I forgot the other.
I think it was me, Grace. It's okay.
And then Mr. Umar, right? Mm.
Yeah. So congratulations to the Secretariat. It's been really good to be working with you all over the past years. And in terms of some possible topics moving forward, I think that the approach that you shared of having both some thematic and some thematic issues to be approached by South-South cooperation, and then another line that is looking at South-South cooperation as a modality or as the way of collaborating. It also goes in line with what we were thinking for suggesting to the group today. In terms of the second one, in terms of the work of the understanding better how South-South cooperation works. In the past calls, we had been doing already some research on the institutional arrangements and the capacities at the national level, mostly of countries that are receiving South-South and triangular cooperation. And we feel that this is an area that we should definitely keep supporting, also because that is essential for South-South cooperation to be successful. So I think that in addition to doing some additional research on these, particularly with the lens of what have been the innovations that have occurred thanks to, in the context of COVID-19, and what are some of the things that are some of the innovations that are here to stay in the ways that countries have managed South-South cooperation. It would be interesting to see if, as a network, we could start pushing forward some ideas for governments on how to improve their institutionality and their capacities to manage South-South cooperation based on the knowledge we've already produced with here with our other colleagues as well. I think that it's a way forward on this, linking the research to practice and supporting that goal of the network as well. And in terms of the thematic issues, one thing that we've seen emerging as a critical concern across the research of our members that are based in Africa, Asia, and Latin America is the question about the digital divide and the digital governance. And we feel that this is an issue where Southern perspectives are lacking, where we can really it would be really useful to have a space for Southern scholars to discuss this issue more explicitly and to develop frameworks, ideas of how to manage these global public good more wisely, and that responds also to the needs the Global South. So in terms of themes, we feel that this one is another one that has, it has become critical that has shown to be critical with COVID, and that we think that a network like this one can really support with bringing innovative thinking of how do we govern these digital spaces, how do we make sure that the interests of the Global South are considered at the international level, and so on. So that's the second area that we would like to propose. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Angie. Now we give the floor to Mr. Uma.
Thank you very much, and indeed, it's a great pleasure to be invited to this prestigious forum. Since we are new, and I think it's proper to just briefly introduce ourselves, what we do and where we come from. Basically, this CAREC Think Tanks Network is called Central Asia Regional Economic Cooperation Think Tank Networks. CAREC program is a sub-regional development initiative of the Asian Development Bank, and CAREC Institute is the knowledge arm of the CAREC program. And CAREC Institute established this think tank network in 2017 that comprises nearly 60 think tanks and universities coming from 11 member countries of the CAREC program. And 5 countries are from the Central Asia, 2 are from the South Caucasus, 2 countries are from East Asia, including China and Mongolia, and 2 countries are from South Asia, including Afghanistan and Pakistan. And the CAREC Institute is headquartered in Urumqi, the People's Republic of China, and also serves as the secretariat to this CAREC Think Tanks Network, the CTTN. And myself working as a coordinator of this think tank network. So I basically coordinate the activities of this network. So again, thank you so very much for inducting us into this prestigious Thinkers Forum. Regarding 2 priority areas which at the CTTN we believe are very important going forward, particularly in the context of the pandemic and the geopolitical situation that is fast evolving, not only in the region, but also globally. So in our understanding, we believe that climate change agenda and regional cooperation is one of the important priority area for this CAREC region, because most of the countries of the CAREC region are vulnerable to the vagaries of weather, to climate change issues, and the water, sustainable energy, food security are the biggest challenges most of the CAREC countries are facing. We believe that climate change is a complex global issue, and that gradually worsens, and reversing its impact is a monumental challenge, and that calls for a multilateral cooperation. It poses a significant threat to crucial sectors of the economy like water supply, agriculture, energy, food systems, and supply chains, etc. And also the infrastructure is also vulnerable to climate change. So we understand that regional cooperation can help reduce costs and improve resource efficiency and scale up best practices, knowledge, technology, and capacity building, and also can attract innovative financing and private sector participation. So first priority area for CGTN is basically the climate change and the regional cooperation. And the second priority area, which we believe is very important, is the digitalization of the economies as a way forward to build back better. As we all know that when the pandemic hit, the businesses, the governments, the individuals, the universities, they all shifted to digital technologies to provide essential services. So this has now become really part of our life. And if we look at the new technologies, and then if we look at the SDGs, there are a lot of complementarities which we can leverage to attain these sustainable development goals by focusing on the new technologies. So, and also it is very evident, at least in our region, that this pandemic has actually brought brought open this digital divide across the countries and within countries. We can easily say that some regions are very well advanced in terms of digital access as compared to other regions. Within a country and even among countries, this divide is huge. So I think this is probably the right time to focus on digital technologies to actually work together for a better and inclusive and sustainable recovery, economic recovery. So the second priority area for CGTN is basically the digital economy as a way forward to building back better. So these are our two priority areas, and with this, I also would beg leave because it's a Ramadan time here and it's the fast breaking time here in Pakistan. So I have to rush to break my fast. It's a pleasure meeting you, and thank you so very much for giving us this opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Uma, for your advice and forward-looking suggestions. Yeah, we understand this is the holy month, and thank you very much for joining us. So now I have the next round of speakers. The first one is Mr. Hagi, followed by Dr. Yue-Fen, and then Sofian and Mr. Wang Lei, and Ms. Tazan and Mr. Angie. So after this round, I will have the last round of speakers. So if you haven't yet raised your hand, please be prepared to do so if you have something to add to the conversation. Yes, Mr. Hagi, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Grace, and thank you for inviting us to the group, to the steering committee meeting. Thanks to yourself, to the UN Office of South-South Cooperation, UNDP, and also to the think tanks. And I think the discussion already has shown to me what kind of rich source of knowledge that we have here at the table. And we look forward to both have the opportunity to tap into this knowledge. And also, of course, if we can, we would like to contribute as well. I will not speak for a long time, but I will maybe spend 1 minute on my agency, NOREC, because I guess quite a few of you have not heard about that. We are then the Norwegian Agency for Exchange Cooperation, and we are an agency under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And our main mandate is to facilitate and finance exchange of personnel internationally and within the framework of institutional cooperation. So we facilitate so people can go and stay with a partner in another country for a year and return hopefully with more knowledge and also have contributed something in the place where that person stayed. And this is, of course, not only south-south, it's also, we have people going from Norway to the south and from south to Norway, but the growing number of people are going south-south. So this is the future as it looks to a great extent. And of course, the thematic areas are we are quite open to facilitate this for many areas, but of course it has to relate to the Sustainable Development Goals in a meaningful way. So I think for this network and also for NOREC, the word knowledge is the key. It's a core concept for us, and I would like to emphasize that for us, we try to view knowledge not as a sort of a package that we wrap in one country and send to the other country where it's simply opened and consumed. I think we have to look at knowledge as a much more dynamic thing, which is developed in cooperation, which leads us to the issue of reciprocity in all relations. We have to sit at the table with confidence, all of us, and we have all something to give and something to contribute and something to learn, which is essential. This brings us then, of course, to our priorities, as you mentioned, Grace. What is important for us to have on our research agenda? I think I will just mention one briefly. Of course, partnership is for us important because exchange of personnel takes place within the framework of a partnership. If not, if we have only individuals going, we wouldn't have the anchoring of knowledge that we would really like to see. But the other one, which I will maybe say just a few more words about, would then be exchange of personnel as such. And we are very open, of course, to now hear what are the Global South view on personnel exchange. That we are doing so much and we have been doing it for 20 years. But we have had evaluations from here and there, but we haven't really had some good inputs from the Global South on the way we exchange personnel. Of course, the point of departure for us, as for many others, is the BAPA plus 40 outcome document. And here, personnel exchange and also exchange of knowledge in general is considered as a very essential mean to reach the Sustainable Development Goals. And we, of course, would like to see research that really shows the relevance of personnel exchange, and also how personnel exchange can be refined and fine-tuned so it becomes even more relevant. That is of great interest to us. And we also would like to really emphasize the principle of reciprocity, and that everybody has something to learn and contribute. So, but how is it really in the real world? Is this simply a nice thing that we say, or will it really happen? We can see there are power dynamics in South-South cooperation as well as North-South, and we would like to be honest about it and try to get viewpoints on it. How horizontal is actually this cooperation that we try to facilitate? And my last point would then be that, you know, another aspect of people going and staying and contributing in another country is that you create relations, and personnel exchange is a different dimension than only financial cooperation and technical cooperation, because you have to do with people, and people are often an essential element in creating trust. Now we've been sitting in these webinars for 2 years and we haven't seen each other's eyes properly for a long time, but we miss the events where we could really meet and create real trust and really force relationships. And I think that's quite essential also. And when we do that, we contribute, of course, to achieving maybe goal 16 and other goals where really cooperation is necessary. But also we take with us increased cultural understanding and other things about the country we stay. And we would really like to see that being put also under under increased attention for research, how that part is working. So these are just a few of our ideas. In a few days or a couple of weeks, we will launch a new report on partnership, and we look forward to work together with this group, both on personnel exchange as well as other issues that might come up. So thank you, Grace, again, and that's it.
Thank you, Hegi. Thank you for highlighting this human dimension, which is the essence and the ultimate purpose of all partnerships. Thank you very much. Dr. Lee, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Grace. It's really a pleasure to participate in the steering committee meeting for the first time. I will follow the example of the previous speakers, just introduce the South Center a little bit, just in a couple of sentences. The South Center is an intergovernmental think tank for the developing countries. We have 54 members from the developing world, and the center has been mandated to promote South-South cooperation. So we really want to join the network and to work closely with other think tanks. We think it is really cross-fertilization process to learn from others, and will take the best advantage of working together with the think tanks from the 4 continents. And allow me also to congratulate for the achievements made during the first phase of the project of the network. Congratulations also go to Grace and your team for the excellent job done as the Secretariat and leader for the network. And let me just say one word about the way forward. I was one of the person being interviewed for the assessment of the first phase of the project. And I did mention during the interview that we hope the network could be more assertive and have a greater impact on the policymaking process. For instance, at the G20, at the UN. So I think we could produce short policy briefs to recommend the policy and strategies for the coming months or years. I think it will be important of the mandate of the network, which actually has been stipulated. Regarding the priority areas, we agree very much with what was presented just now. Poverty alleviation is very important, especially with the pandemic. The poverty really has increased tremendously, and there has been big reversal of numbers of people in extreme poverty. However, when we deal with this subject, it will be important to link it with the immediate concerns we are having at this moment. For instance, the pandemic has increased inequality, and also we know that climate change is the greatest concern of the world right now. So when we address the issue of poverty alleviation, I hope that we can address that from a multidisciplinary approach. So the analytical work or evidences to be collected should promote cohesion, and also should aim at overcoming inequalities at the national and international levels, and also fully take into consideration of protecting the environment, and also adapt to and mitigate climate changes. So it's a kind of new approach for poverty alleviation we would like to see to be examined and promoted, and actually to be implemented. So that's the first priority area we would like to mention. And another, or the second area is that during the COVID-19 pandemic, South-South cooperation has really taken place. We've seen southern countries supported each other during the pandemic in many forms, even though they have very limited capacities. And of course, we also see the kind of lack of resistance during the pandemic for South-South cooperation in some countries and in some areas. So we think it will be important probably for us to really examine the initiatives of South-South and triangular cooperation taken place during the pandemic to catalog the activities and also analyze them, and to see how the South-South cooperation could be implemented and performed in a way to supplement North-South cooperation, and how to deal with future challenges if we are going to encounter such kind of crisis. Of course, it's not an if, the crisis is a problem of when. So it will be really important for us to look into the lessons and experiences during the current pandemic so that we would prepare better for the future. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Yue-Fen. Yes, thank you for your advice and for contribution to the strategic review. And we have already adopted your recommendation to produce policy briefs. Thank you very much. Yes, now I have Dr. Sofian, followed by Dr. Wang Lei. The floor is yours, Dr. Sofian. You're muted. You're muted.
You're muted too, Grace.
Okay, I'm okay, I think, right? All right, thank you very much. I believe you see my two slides there that you know about the research priorities. So I will not dwell too long. I'll be very brief. As Dr. Raad before has talked about the more global picture about South-South cooperation in the Arab region. Basically, you know, the two issues that we thought about for research priorities tend to be the result of our first experience with South-South cooperation projects during this first phase of since 2017. As you can see, we are focusing on two issues. First is the issue of governance of South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation. It's a real challenge in the region. I mean, we have tried to engage with some basic projects about climate change, multi-stakeholder involvement. These were the two that were retained, and later on we tried to get involved with issues of migrant workers and a few other topics. And invariably, the real issue in the region is an issue of governance. That is, South-South cooperation is extremely difficult, first for legal reasons, you know, and second thing also, you know, public administration is a major impediment in most of these countries, which tend to be almost exclusively oriented towards the north than to be sideway oriented. And the third issue has to do with the lack of, if you want, vehicles or resources that would enable South-South cooperation across the Arab region. So therefore, I mean, for us, at least in terms of the second phase of the project, issues of governance of South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation would become extremely important. For example, to have some sort of a policy base for South-South cooperation, which is all, you know, completely missing, not almost, completely missing. If you look, for example, even at some regional bodies, most of them lack such a basis as well. You know, project of South-South cooperation tends to remain at the level of political intentions, MOUs, and things like that. But concretely on the ground, you know, except for, you know, financing and things like that, they tend not to materialize. So evidence-based policy making for SSC would be something that we would like to research around, would like to build capacity about, etc. Strategies for the enablement of South-South cooperation, triangular cooperation. Again, you know, we see enablement because there are many impediments to such a thing happening, including, you know, as I said, the legal, you know, aspect of that, but also the public administration aspect, you name it. So, you know, how to, you know, work on strategies both within countries or across countries, and, you know, show the way of how to enable that, and of course, the process showing the advantages of doing so. Transnational governance of South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation. This is an offshoot of the first two elements, which is, you know, again, across country borders, how to manage South-South cooperation, whether it is, you know, at the level of, you know, or below rather country to country level, when it is at the bottom level, especially when it reaches into the community level. There again, we have to look at benchmarks. We have to look at what would need to be done to be able to do that. And of course, the global governance of South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation could be of interest, of course, to the whole network. And I think this is an issue that has been raised throughout. So this is the first priority research area, which is one of governance of South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation. The second priority area is what we term grassroots South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation. Here, we're talking about more concrete things, you know, breeding some successful practices and experiences and trying to replicate them, etc. But obviously, this would come under not only research, but also capacity building. For example, developing tool sets for communities involvement in South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation. I think Grace before talked about this lab, this South-South cooperation lab. I think maybe this lab could at some point in time, you know, deal with developing this type of tool sets, you know, whether they are IT based or otherwise. Best and comparative practices in community South-South cooperation. There would be something, for example, where we could better harness the network, you know, across the different regions. I think there are, you know, some other regions like Latin America, for example, or Asia, I believe are much more advanced in their South-South cooperation, especially at the community level. And of course, we would benefit very much from associating with them and doing some cross-regional research. And last is South-South cooperation in community context. Obviously, this would be some sort of a case study. This is a little bit a continuation of what we have been doing over the last 5 years, at looking, for example, at how, you know, successful experience or maybe not so successful ones in climate change, poverty reduction, pandemic recovery, and all of these emerging issues where South-South cooperation could make a change. So these are the general ideas that I wanted to share with you, and that we intend to hopefully pursue in the second phase of the project. And I would like to conclude by thanking Grace, Shams, Navid, and all of the team in New York for their support and for making this project a successful one. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Safin. I think all these are very rich ideas. I will save time not to comment, but I'm sure we will have a good summary consolidating all the ideas. And let us now, I need to warn you that we started 5 minutes late, so we may beg you for an extension of the meeting for 10 minutes because we have, I think, 5 speakers before the closing. Now I would like to invite Mr. Wang Lei from CAS as the newly established network chair for Think Tanks Network on Poverty Eradication and Sustainable Development. I think you have over 20 think tanks across 12 countries so far. It's very new, but we would like to hear from you the priorities of research for the network moving forward. Yes, Mr. Wang Lei, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Grace. I would like to say some words from the point of view of the global network on poverty eradication. So about poverty eradication, I think very fundamental is to help the countries, the developing countries, to reinforce, to vitalize their economies. So when their economies could be strengthened, then we can achieve better people's livelihood, to help people to achieve better income, and the country's physical situation could be enhanced, and more jobs could be created. So I would like to propose two priorities concerning such a basic fundamental aim. One is about the digital economy. I think the world now is witnessing the so-called fourth industrial revolution. So if the developing countries, the global south could take the opportunity of this fourth industrial revolution, they can achieve a much better prospects of economic performance in the future. I think the application of digital technologies in the social and the economic undertakings is very significant. It can really help to deepen and expand the market, to mobilize more resources, very fundamental for enhancing countries' capacity of economy. So I think our program should do more jobs in this area to help the developing countries have more references and experiences to compare, and to make their choice how they can better nurture their digital economy. The second priority I would like to propose is about the industrialization. So now a lot of discussions in Africa, in Latin America, so many countries are still of very strong aspiration about industrialization. Actually, industrialization can really help the developing countries to create more jobs, and also help them to have stronger capacity to resist any economic crisis, economic risk. I think our program should generate more international expertise and experiences to help those developing countries who would like to move forward in the process of industrialization, and also provide technical assistance for them, and also provide the policy recommendations for them in this area. So that's my 2 points. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Wang Lei. Now I would like to move on to invite Ms. Tazin from CESRIC, and then Dr. Angie, followed by Maria and Laura. Thank you very much. And before, this is the last 4 speakers, and then we would conclude. I would invite our funding partner, Yinke Law Firm, and UNDP to deliver remarks following this. So Tazin, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Grace. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all the participants. In the past 5 years, CESRIC has benefited from the valuable and insightful engagements that have taken place under the banner of South-South Global Thinkers Coalition. I'd first like to congratulate all the think tank networks for their impressive contributions to the coalition, and the Secretariat and the team at UNOSSC for making this coalition really an invaluable opportunity for cooperation amongst knowledge producers. CESRIC is a subsidiary organ of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, which is an intergovernmental organization with 57 member countries. It's the second largest IGO in the world after United Nations. We are mandated to encourage cooperation amongst OIC member countries by undertaking and disseminating research and statistics, as well as facilitating training and capacity building for policymakers in the OIC member countries. So a majority of the 57 OIC member states whose experiences we study and recount are in the Global South. These states are at varying levels of development and have distinctive developmental trajectories. Yet their developmental objectives are very much in line with other nations in the global South. From the outcomes of the first phase of this coalition, we know that South-South and triangular cooperation and the knowledge creation and exchange that it promotes are vital for not only guiding policymaking in OIC member states, but also ensuring that they are not left behind when it comes to achieving sustainable development. And while all the emerging trends identified by UNOSSC are of extreme importance, for OIC member countries in the second phase of this project, we hope to see further evidence-based research on the role that SSC can play in poverty alleviation, improving agriculture systems and food security, and building resilience against crises, natural crises such as climate emergencies, and even man-made crises such as the COVID-19 pandemic. There's also a need to take into consideration the diverse social, economical, and cultural factors which are very specific to the OIC member states and many others in the global South that have a deep and direct impact on how SSC is appropriately practiced at local, national, and regional levels to advance sustainable development. For example, identifying ways in which we can tailor existing SSC modalities or develop newer modalities, let's say digital or innovative modalities, to improve local and national capacities for data production and dissemination that can not only inform a needs assessment, but also multi-sectoral engagement and policymaking, especially for countries that have inadequate infrastructure, expertise, resources, or the political will to do so. The reason why I'm highlighting this specific example is that policymaking apparatus in many OIC countries is often separated by a few degrees from data creation and dissemination processes. And therefore, it is also separated from recommendations that are widely generated via evidence-based research. But at the same time, policymaking processes are heavily influenced by resource considerations, political will, and multi-sectoral or even bilateral and multilateral support for various interventions. Through our work, we repeatedly see how one solution really does not fit all OIC member countries. So consideration for specific contexts is very important. These were the two main priority areas that we wanted to highlight. Unfortunately, hearing the various perspectives presented throughout this meeting have made me realize that we're all on the same page when it comes to making SSC more context specific and adaptable moving forward. In the end, I would like to convey SESRIC's willingness and readiness to be a steadfast and constructive partner for the coalition in the future. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Tazeen. We appreciate the partnership very much. Thank you. So next we hear again from Dr. Andrew. I think it will be unfair to the last speaker, so we will give 3 minutes to each of you. Yes, Dr. Andrew, please.
Yes, thank you. I'll try to be brief in spelling out the research priority areas of NEST, the Network of Southern Think Tanks. The first one is something that's been carried out by NEST Latin America, which is a proposal on a development cooperation barometer. It intends to track practitioners and stakeholders' standpoints towards international development cooperation agenda. And it does so by means of regular surveys. We have already carried out the first, and we plan to carry out a few more in the coming years. More precisely, the Development Cooperation Barometer aims at monitoring the Latin American international cooperation for development community's perception of the relevance, demand, and impact of South-South and triangular cooperation initiatives in the region, and especially with a special regard to the provision of public goods, be they regional or global. The NEST would also like to do a quick survey of broad trends in the post-COVID push for joint R&D initiatives and partnerships for future pandemic preparedness, which is a theme that has already come up, including in your presentation, Grace. And this is a proposal by our partner, RIS, Research Information Systems for Developing Country from India. The survey would also come up with potential areas for cooperation that the governments from the South may consider for possible partnerships and collaborations. from China Agricultural University. The proposal is to explore the innovative approaches of agricultural R&D, South-South cooperation, triangular cooperation for global food security and poverty reduction, particularly in vulnerable countries in pursuit of common development, which is also a theme that has been discussed in this meeting. And finally, from our partners in Africa, SAIA, there's a proposal to evaluate international credit rating agencies. The consistency and fair application of the indicators of these agencies, both quantitative and qualitative, has been called into question. And so this would justify a proposal to focus on the lessons and perspectives of emerging countries in this regard, and again, with a particular focus on Africa. And I'll stop here, thanks.
Yeah, great, thank you very much, very clear, and quite ambitious agenda. Thank you very much, very important. Yes, let's hear from Dr. Maria Ortiz, followed by Laura Lopez and Professor Justin Lee.
Thank you, Grace. Good day, everyone. Personally, this is my first time here, so I'm speaking from Quito, Ecuador. I'm the Research and Evaluation Director at Grupo Faro, but I'm speaking on behalf of the Latin America think tank network called ILAIP. And talking about specific or context-specific research, let me just show you a little super quick this graph. I hope everybody is seeing, because one of the research areas that we like to propose is the post-COVID education gaps. As you can see in this graph, all the Latin American countries have had a much greater number of weeks of full school closures due to COVID in relation to OCDE, for example. So we want to strongly, and let me stop sharing the screen. We would like to strongly propose, as I said, post-COVID education gaps, like in more specific digital education, infrastructure, or inequality. And we would also like to propose the reduction of civic space and civil society participation in regards to freedom of association, freedom of expression, and freedom of peaceful assembly. And if I may add a third theme or area for research that some of our members are already working on is the employment challenge in regards to informal workers, to the growth of platforms or collaborative economy, and the future of work with these new ways of work that we are all experiencing now, and also social protection in relation to poverty reduction. So thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Laura?
Thank you, Grace. I'm going to be very, very quick. It's just, I agree with the suggestions that are, content specific for South-South cooperation research. I think it's really important, to focus on health and post-COVID and all the themes that were raised here. But I just wanted to highlight that there is this, I don't want to say unfinished, rather ongoing agenda around South-South cooperation governance, institutional framework, something that was a point raised by Mr. Sahraoui. And I think that as think tanks, we are very uniquely positioned to develop research on it and foster trust among South-South cooperation stakeholders, whether governmental or non-governmental, to raise support and to regain momentum for South-South cooperation, which in our region specifically has gone backwards during the pandemic. So this is the point that I wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laura. And lastly, Professor Lin, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Grace. I'd like to use this opportunity to share with idea about two research priorities. And one is to unleash the potential of development financial institutions, because we know to achieve SDG, then growth is very important. But in most countries, the growth encounter the bottleneck of infrastructure. And there's a huge gap in terms of infrastructure financing. And the development financial institution would be pivotal to address the infrastructure bottleneck. And we are delighted to see the rising trend of restoration of financial development financial institutions. But how to further unleash their potential would be one area I think that our South Thinker Network can work on. So that's one of the research priority. The other one is that how to scale up renewable energy investment, because certainly we need to achieve the climate target. But at the same time, the country will have to have energy for development. And a green energy will be the solution. And especially like China already pledged not to build the fire power plant, not only in China, but also in other countries. But there are some, the potential for green energy and how to scale up that. That is also one research area that we propose. So that be short, and thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Professor Lin, for this very important topics in a very short time. Very clear. Thank you very much. Now, before we do the concluding remarks, I would like to invite Ms. Linda Yang, the chairwoman of Yingke Global. So without their support, we cannot accomplish so much. So Linda, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Grace. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all distinguished participants. Well, congratulations to the great success and achievements of the first phase of the program. As one of the founding partners of the network, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to all of your contribution and efforts in the past 5 years. Well, as Grace just introduced, our firm is not only the financial sponsor, but also we share our knowledge and experience with all of you. In the past 5 years, we co-organized 3 summits on investment in Bangkok, Prague, and Antananarivo. And also I was invited to participate the South-South Cooperation Expo in Antalya in Turkey and also in New York. I shared about how a company like us from the private sector can make contribution to South-South cooperation and SDGs. I'm very honored to be part of it. And also thank you for all of your speech sharing the priorities of the researches in the next phase. I would also, expect the cooperation for the next phase. I wish that we could work together on some aspects with significant value, both from policy researches and legal practice dimensions. We identified a topic with increasing attention from government, investors, corporate leaders, and the public, which is ESG investing. We always believe that successful investment is one of the engines for achieving sustainable development goals. ESG investment is considered as sustainable investment or social responsible investment. Well, in many countries, public policies increasingly favor investments in energy and infrastructure projects that further environmental and social justice goals by mitigating the impact of climate change, decarbonizing the energy and transportation sectors, and improving both clean drinking water supplies and digital broadband connectivity in underserved or low-income communities. Obviously, all the above investments are closely related to SDG goals. And 2 recent developments are particularly interesting. There are more requirements from regulators on ESG disclosure and enforcement, and also increasingly concerns of investors. This development continue to reflect a growing investors and broader public focus on how companies are addressing their ESG risks and demand for greater transparency and clarity on ESG disclosures. So I think for the members of the network, we can work together to assist the government to work out the most appropriate laws, regulations, and policies on key ESG-related issues like climate disclosure management, disclosure of social, environment, and climate risk, sustainability, and also corporate governance requirements, etc. Well, thanks again for involving Inca Law Firm to this great program, and we will, of course, continue to support. And also, we look forward to see each other in person in the near future. Thank you. Special appreciation to Grace. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Linda. And indeed, Inca has been not only financially support, but contribute a lot of your knowledge, experience, and network resources around the world. Thank you very much. We really appreciate the partnership. Now it's the closing. I plan to invite my colleague Faiza from UNDP to do the closing remarks. I don't see her online. Maybe we were extended beyond time. So Yuko.
Yes.
Yes, please.
Yeah. With the apology from Faiza, she had to actually be engaging in a different meeting. So on behalf of UNDP, I mean, first of all, just to really appreciate a very rich and insightful sort of exchange and ideas that have come in this discussion. And I think, you know, I was very much struck by how significant collective brain power that we have in this, you know, sort of a network, and then all of you engaged. So it was quite interesting and very, very insightful. Some of the key takeaways, at least from my end, and then on behalf of the UNDP, I think for the second phase of the project, really looking at ways in which to really explore that improving the bridge between the research and policy making and implementation. And I think there was quite an interesting and a useful ideas that has come out in the conversation, like looking at the vehicles and looking at also, you know, the organs within the intergovernmental, of course, at the global, but also at the regional level, and trying to really, you know, partner with those, you know, the entities to really bring that research and then the policy making and implementation sort of a nexus to be more impactful. I also heard about some of the products that we have to be looking at in the second phase, which of course we've started doing the policy briefs, but I think this will probably need to continue with quite an engagement with the think tank networks, you know, themselves. And then also I heard about the importance of the strategic communications and advocacy in a way that, you know, it's linked to that kind of bridging the vehicles and some of the opportunity to really bring those generated knowledge and the research to achieve that kind of a policy changes and some of that implementation achievement. So on behalf of you know, UNDP, of course, those sort of useful issues and ideas will feed into our thinking for the second phase of the project, and then we look really forward to continue working with all of you. And the UNDP will continue to commit and then support this South-South Global Thinker Network. And thank you so much for the opportunity to being part of this initiatives and then also being part of that conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yuko. As you said, this is the brain power that will energize us moving forward to advance this very important agenda, South-South and Triangular Cooperation for Sustainable Development. I would like to invite all of you, if possible, to show your video, and we can at the end take a full family picture of the Global Thinkers Initiative. So I thank the teams of UNDP and UNOSSC for your great support and wonderful work. For the past 5 years or so, we have Yuko, Shams, Juliana, Jianting, and Jiajun, Navida, and I may forget some names, but we all worked together in this. So 1, 2, 3, cheers. Somebody is taking the photo, right? I'm not. Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, okay, thank you. We will be in touch through emails and the online network and future meetings and good news about the research and about colorful proposals. And if you have any new ideas, feel free to share anytime.
Thank
It's
you.
such a
Bye-bye.
pleasure to work with all of you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Take care. Thanks.
Bye
Have
all.
a good day. Good
Bye.
night.
Night.
Good day.
Good day.
Bye.